Well, first Holmes was born, then he got fat, bald, and tired. Sup, Holmes?
Hello, everyone. Hello. How are you? I'm okay. I'm doing this show called Sup Holmes. We're doing it again this Sunday. It's happening right now. Hopefully you're watching it, and it's also a podcast, so hopefully you're listening to it. My cat just showed up, so look out for that. And we have Christine Love on the show this week. Say hi to everybody, Christine.
Hello.
How are you?
Pretty awesome.
You are pretty awesome. When did you dye your hair?
Just a couple days ago. It was.
It looks really good.
It was pink for a whole year, so I figured I should probably do something different eventually.
And what caused you to want to change your hair color?
Well, it's a long story that goes back to my childhood.
Well, just from this most recent change, from pink to kind of a nice blue blonde, I'd call it.
It's blue. Blue's different.
Pink was like old school? Like old news?
Yeah. That's passé now. It's all about the blue.
Well, it looks great. Thank you for being on our show. I'm trying to use a new technique for warming up my guests, because normally, I don't know if you've seen or heard the show, but normally there's like a half hour of, I don't want to call it small talk, but really getting the person, the guest, warmed up. And then sometimes they let out just unbelievable stuff that comes out of nowhere. And I feel like it's my fault that it takes so long for the unbelievable stuff to come out. So with you, we're going to try something new to get the unbelievable stuff to come out. I'm going to ask you 3 questions that are going to get you so warmed up for talking. It's going to be so great. Are you ready for them?
Okay, sure. That's a lot of hype. Let's hear
I'm going to make them up right now. I didn't give this any thought before. So right now, I'm going to ask you, do you like rap music?
I do not know a whole lot about rap music.
Have you ever liked a rap song?
You put me on the spot and asked me to name them. I will turn completely blank.
Yeah, that's why I didn't do that. I was trying to not, because that's awkward. Yeah, thanks.
Wouldn't want this to get awkward now, would we?
No, not at all. So you have liked rap before. That's good. I wish people could have seen that. They only see you when you make a sound.
There's a very long head tilt there.
Yeah, next time you do one of those, just go ooh first, and then the camera will go on you.
I'll try to add some sound effects.
Thank you. I appreciate it. The second of my questions is, have you ever played the violin?
I have never played the violin.
It's hard, because you can't even look at it. It's just, yeah.
You can't look at it. It also doesn't have any sort of markings on it.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. And the third... What's that?
I'm sorry, go on. Ask the question, please.
And the third question I have is, do you like staying in hotels?
If at all necessary.
But not just for the sake of it.
Not really my idea of fun times, no.
Me neither. You know, some people just go to hotels, and they're like, here I am, in a hotel, that was worth the money. And when they have, like, a home that they could have been in, they're not on a business trip. They're just hotel hopping. But not you, eh?
Can't even imagine that. Like, when I visit other cities, I like to, stay with people because, that's a social thing to do.
I found out everything I need to know about you now. Awesome. Do you feel warmed up and ready to talk now? Do you feel great?
I feel profoundly bewildered.
Sorry about
So
that.
close enough.
Let's let everyone know who you are and what you do. You're a video game developer, and most of the games you've made that I've played anyway have been text-based, but not Zork level of text-based. There's always some graphics involved, and I was meaning to ask you personally if you make the graphics yourself. I couldn't find that out by my internet research. So yes, tell us about the games you make and how you make them.
I make games with lots and lots of words in them.
Yes, you do.
Really, I'm in it for telling stories and interactively. They are, despite the text graphics, they are fairly visual. I don't like when it comes to character art and stuff. I'm not that good at drawing. That's usually never me, with the exception of like like in digital, there's some really bad antsy art, and you can tell it's not very good.
Digital A Love Story,
That's
which
right.
was that was just distributed by you on your website, right? I didn't
That's right.
find it anywhere else. Yeah, it's got a neat look to it, though. Did you have input on to the art direction of it? Kind of the old, not even PC, back when they were just personal computers, is kind of the basic look to the start of it, anyway.
Well, that one was. What I was going to say is I do all the illustrative work, so like all the user interface stuff, that's all me.
Ah,
Like,
okay.
I do sort of come from graphic design background, like I've done enough that that's usually what I do first when it comes to a game. I will figure out what the UI is going to be, then I'll actually start doing that once it's all complete.
Huh,
So,
interesting.
in the case of digital, that was just it's pretty much everything art-wise, and that was done by me. But it is styled after the old Amiga computers, so
Oh, okay.
I can't take too much credit for that.
No, you did not invent Amigas, but it
Not
was
so
your
much.
but you were inspired by them and chose to go after that. And speaking of that, you're inspired to make text-based games with writing kind of being the central hook. And are you something I always wonder? Are you thinking while you're making these games like this is a game that's going to touch everyone? And that's going to be huge. It's going to be like the next Twilight. Just everyone on Earth is going to have heard of this, and I'm going to become a huge star and be rich and famous. Is that something that ever goes through your mind while you're making these games?
Well, let me put it this way. My first game was set in 1980s bulletin board systems, and my most recent one is based on an obscure period of Korean history. I'm not really going for the fame here, or even necessarily the accessibility. It's
Yeah.
I mean, they're sort of unusual. I don't ever approach things from the top when considering will this be popular? Because no, of course it won't be. But it'll be something interesting and worthwhile, and I think people care about that more than trying to make something that's deliberately just pandering.
Right. But that's it's a thing I think about a lot, and I want to get your opinion about it. If you're bothering to make something, then you definitely want people to like it. But you don't want to dilute what you're making in order to make it popular, because then you're no longer saying anything, you're just kind of giving people what they already want. And there's a balance there. And with people such as yourself, with developers like you, I think that people assume you don't care at all if people like your game, or else you would have tried to make Gears of War or something. But you must care somewhat, or else you wouldn't bother to make the game at all. Is that right?
Sure, I care a lot because I'm trying to provide an experience that is interesting to people. I just don't want it to be appealing to necessarily the lowest common denominator. I think there's a lot to be said for providing niche. Doing niche stories that don't necessarily appeal to everyone, but the people who they do reach are, I think it might... Cause, something like Gears of War is neat and all, but I like stuff that's a little bit offbeat too, so...
Sure.
Want to be making stuff that does that sort of thing.
Huh, interesting. But you do like some mainstream games, it sounds like. I've been following you on Twitter, and you've been talking about Evo with a lot of passion. You're a passionate fighting game fan, or is that just me misunderstanding you?
I'm not quite into them as much as I used to. God, I'm terrible at Street Fighter now. But it's certainly fun to watch Evo every year. It's really exciting to me to watch high-level fighting gameplay.
Huh, interesting. Just like sports style, then. You don't want to necessarily play it, but you like to just watch it.
I do like to play. I'm just really terrible out of practice.
And
I don't think I'll ever be tournament level. But it's certainly fun to watch.
Interesting. What do you think you like watching? What is it about fighting games that you like to watch?
I'm not really sure exactly what. It's the same appeal as most sports, and it's sort of hard to explain why you like that either. It's just usually you have people, two people playing, trying to get into head games with each other, and like some of it comes down to the reflex part, but most of that at high level play, this is just essentially a really intense game of chess.
And you made a fighting game. At least in my mind, it's a fighting game. One of the funniest deconstructions of fighting games I've played in a while. It's now that I'm on the spot, I feel like I'm going to forget the name.
Lake City Rumble 2, the new challengers.
Yeah, say
There's
that again.
There's no one. It's just 2. Lake City Rumble 2.
And it's a game where you choose your character, like in a fighting game, and you've got some of the tropes in there. You've got the exotic Asian lady and the tough Afro man from the streets, and you have the everyman Caucasian gentleman, and a bunch of other characters. And then from there, you enter a fighting tournament, and it's really exciting.
This was basically my love letter to, because people tell me who plays fighting games with plots, but people love the stories of fighting games just on a very, they're always silly, but I've heard, so many conversations about, the ridiculous, what's the ridiculous backstory behind Sakura? As an example, or, everyone loves Dan Hibiki. It's, people care about fighting game stories. It's just not necessarily serious.
Right, so, and I think if they were serious, people might like them less, because fighting games are already such a serious feeling, especially when you're in the arcade and you put quarters on the line and it's your money and your pride involved. To have it be kind of light and self-parody is a relief, and your game is really a tribute to that feeling, I thought.
It's absolutely about that. No one likes, fighting games that have these huge elaborate story modes where it's all super complex and there's these long introductions. But the little bits of character blurbs in between fights, those ones fun.
Right,
So that's what this was. This was just me, an excuse to write a lot of really silly fighting game style character dialogue.
But you didn't leave out the fighting. You actually do fighting game moves in it and have long fights. It's pretty hard, actually, and I still haven't figured it out. And the way it works, for the people who haven't played it, you just click on what move you want to do, and then the text reads out what happens after you did that move. And if you're crappy at fighting games, that's exactly how it feels. You just kind of throw out random moves and hopes some of them stick. It's really quite brilliant. I'm glad you made that game. Thank you.
It's actually more simple than it looks. It's just honestly. It was just me playing around with an idea based off breaking it down to rock, paper, scissors mechanics. But the computer just works completely deterministically. It always does things in a certain order. So, in the first match, you should always do throw, then a block, then an attack, then a throw, then a block, then an attack, and then you win.
Huh.
So it's a matter of figuring out what those patterns are, which is this wasn't a very this was a fairly quickly done project, so it's not really any sort of high-level strategy there at all.
Yeah, but still, you put some thought into that and made that. And I wish that was... I don't see why that isn't a hugely popular game. Did that get a lot of hits when it came out? A lot of people play it?
It got a little bit of notice. This was actually, I think, something I did before digital, which was... Digital Love Story was the first thing that actually got big. That actually was, Christine Love is an indie game maker. So Lake City Rumble came before that, and it was just a little thing that I did. 20 of my friends played, and they thought it was cute.
Interesting. What do you think it was about digital that caused you to get more attention and for people to start talking about what you were doing?
It's really hard to say. It's digital is certainly a longer experience. It's like an hour, or if you're really bad, 2 hours long. So it's not even if you're really bad. If you're easily bewildered by my completely labyrinth of game logic. But the point is that it's sort of a more longer experience than I think most people expect from downloadable indie games. That was a really common thing I got, was that people would start it late at night because they figured it's a 5-minute thing. It's 1 a.m. and they're writing me an email about how they've been crying for the past 10 minutes.
Oh, wow. That must have been pretty awesome on your end to get that email.
Yeah, it was very weird. It was just like, it just completely blew up out of nowhere. Before I never thought of myself as really being much of a game maker at all. I figured this would just be yet another visual novel that's slightly interactive.
Mm-hmm.
And next thing I know, it's going on TIG Source, it's going on Boing, and then it's sort of blowing up from there.
Huh.
So it went from basically my readership consisted of me and a few friends to thousands of people.
Right, and now your latest
overnight.
game, and you're on Steam now with I wouldn't call it a sequel, but it's kind of a spiritual sequel, would you say? Analog?
Yeah, it's a mechanical sequel. Like the story doesn't follow at all, but it has all the same. It's very similar mechanically. It builds off a lot of the way it plays rather than what the story's about.
Right, and I'm hoping it's been successful. From what I can tell, from following you and just reading reviews and checking what people are saying on the internet, it seems like a lot of people have given it a shot.
It's been crazy successful. I'm completely bewildered by how much love I've gotten from people for this. It's just so yeah, this is was my first commercial thing, and basically it's done well enough that I can do a full-time game making gig for quite some time now.
Awesome.
Yeah, this is I am now a professional game maker, thanks to a lot of people supporting me, and that's really awesome.
Yeah, and you made a game which defies, like you were saying, you didn't go into this trying to make something that was going to be a huge hit. You went into it making something that you believed in, that you thought was filling a niche that you like to fill for yourself and for the people who get it. And yet, it's blown up somewhat. There's got to be kind of a weird contradiction in your brain there around what is successful and what's not, and how to be a success and how to remain niche. So has that changed your outlook on the way the market is and what people want from video games to see yourself become a success like this?
I feel like it just shows that there's so much room now in indie games for there to be all sorts of people doing totally different things. Because it's not huge, like, I'm not even Super Meat Boy huge, or any other really mainstream indie game, but it's like if someone doing something like, and I don't get crazy huge press, it's just enough to support making this, and I mean it's certainly good. It does well enough, and at the same time I can't imagine like how crazy it must be for any of the big names. I think this just shows that there's a lot of room for even someone small like me with a minor success can do so well off this and be get so much press.
Right. I'm hoping it leads to bigger things, because personally, I remember a day when the text adventure wasn't a niche thing. It was right alongside Pac-Man and Pitfall was Zork. People were playing the hell out of Zork all night. It's all-night Zork parties. People getting together, eating potato chips, playing Zork till the wee hours. And I can't see why that wouldn't be able to come back today. If you can involve people's minds the way you do. And I was going to say before about Lake City. Why do I always feel like I'm going to mess up the name of your game? Lake City
Rumble.
Rumble. I know why. It's because it reminds me of River City Rampage, and I always want to say that too. With that game, you involved my fighting game side of my personality with a text adventure. With digital and analog, especially with analog, you touch on people's kind of Mass Effect side of their brain, I think. Their sci-fi adventure world, but just with text. And I'm hoping you're teaching people that that's a valid way of going about making a game these days, that you don't have to rely just on Flash and presentation from a visual standpoint. Not that the game doesn't look nice; it looks great, but there's not deep pockmarked textures and realistic boogers and stuff like that people like these days. It's it's a clean, attractive game, but it's the text that really sells people. So I'm hoping we can get back to that's a style of game that can be huge again. Do you think it's possible? You think you could ever get so huge like Zork style again?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to speculate on that. I know that I don't think it's necessarily about the text so much as about telling stories or about actually caring about narrative.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you compare it to something like Mass Effect, which I think is once you remove the shooting bits, of course, it's definitely about lots of conversations and talking to people, and those parts are appealing. And I think they do an excellent job of telling a story, despite they're not actually text. I mean, it's spoken, but it's still the core of it is just actually having narrative and actually being that's what focuses.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it necessarily has to go back to long bits of prose. I mean, that's what I do because that's what I had the ability to do. I mean, one person collaborating with a single artist can only do so much, but I think really the most important thing there is just caring about narrative.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you schooled me. You schooled my mind. Zork and Mass Effect aren't really that different, just Mass Effect's got shooting. Did I say that right?
Shooting.
I think no. Who likes that? Shooting. If you had unlimited budget, if you could just make any game you want, because you were just touching on the fact that you're relying on your strengths, which is always a wonderful thing, because you don't have a huge team to work with, so you're sticking with what you love and know, which is prose. But let's say you suddenly were in a position to make a huge multi-million-dollar game, which could happen. You never know. You could end up being the Robert Rodriguez of game development, going from making your own small stuff to then being handed the new Spy Kids, the game. That could be you. So what if you were tasked to make a huge blockbuster, would you even want to do it? And if you did want to do it, do you have any ideas as to how you would go about it? It's a tough one. It's a tough question. It's okay if you can't think of anything to say, but I just can't help it when I ask you, just in case.
I don't think anything I'd want to make with a blockbuster budget would actually be anything a publisher would want me to make with a blockbuster budget, but what I would do with millions of dollars is I would make Mass Effect, except with magical girls instead.
With magical what?
Magical girls. So
magical
you'd have
girls?
all sorts of flashing colors. You'd have the character creator with your transformation sequence. You'd have lots and lots of conversations about feelings and also about fighting monsters. And,
it's so funny you would say that, because have you heard of the game Code of Princess?
I've seen this, and it's interesting, I guess would be the word.
The illustrator for that game, I'm blanking on her full name. I think it's Nishimura is her last name. That's exactly what she wanted the game to be, which is just an RPG with magical girls talking about feelings and fighting monsters occasionally. And they slowly just turned that into just a violent beat-em-up in the style of Guardian Heroes, which is weird. But maybe you could team up with Nishimura-san. Make a magical girl. Is that shoujo? They call that shoujo?
Yeah, that'd be fun. Really,
And I don't see why that wouldn't be hugely popular. People like that shoujo manga, don't they?
Yeah, no, I think we've got a real untapped market here. People who are playing Gears of War, but what they really want is cute sparkles.
Well,
there are no games with cute sparkles, so we'll have to go for Blood Splatter instead.
Well, then there's Lollipop Chainsaw, which is filled with sparkles. I don't know if you've seen or played that game. I just finished writing a huge article about it. But I wonder what you'll think of it. I don't know your taste well enough. Some people absolutely hate it because they think it's pandering to the sexy American cheerleader fetish, and that's it. Other people think that it's taking that fetish and turning it on its head because she is destroying everything and everyone that comes at her, treating her like a sex object by beheading them immediately, sometimes 5 or 6 zombies at a time, just killing them all. So there's two very discrete sides of the argument. Yeah, I wish you'd played it, so then we could talk about it. But we can't. Darn. Maybe next time. But yeah, your shoujo RPG idea, I think it might be brilliant. Could you work on it now, given your current budget, or do you have something else planned, given where you're at in terms of your career at the moment?
Right now, I just want to do sorts of small things, slowly working towards larger style projects, because mostly just I don't actually know how to do really big things right now. I have no idea how to work with more than 2 people. Even that is all just new to me, so it's sort of a matter of building up to that, because digital, or don't take it personally, baby, were all done in the span of a single month. Analog, really? Analog, I took 6 whole months to work on it, and that's the longest I've ever worked on any single project at once. So this is really small stuff. This is I have no idea how I'd cope with spending an entire year on a project. So I want to, learn how to actually do that first before I really dive into it.
How humble are you?
I just don't want to be that person, who suddenly makes a bunch of money and decides to throw it at the most crazy, ambitious thing she could think of, and invariably it turns out she doesn't actually know how to manage that. This is a story you hear so many times, so I'm just trying to be a little bit cautious.
Yeah, that's great. That gives me hope. I mean, I'd be excited if you were just going to go completely nuts, too, to see what would happen, but for your own longevity, it would make sense to pace yourself. That makes a lot of sense.
Still go completely nuts, just not in length.
Right. Not in scope in terms of the game. Have you already started on a new project? Do you have anything particular in mind that you're working on?
I have a couple things I'm working on right now. One is just a sort of Super Game Boy style action game, which is I have no idea what's going on with this game at all. I don't know what the core gimmick is. I don't know what it's going to be about. It's just me teaching myself C again, because it's been so long since I've done an action game of any sort. I really need to learn this again.
Sure.
So that's been fun, but just me screwing around.
So what's interesting. Super Game Boy, not regular Game Boy, and not Super Nintendo, but when they came together.
Game Boy Color, but the Super Game Boy, because it has this I did an article series about looking at how it worked technically a while ago. It's so interesting. Basically, the way it works is that you get everything that's on the screen. It sends it to the screen, on your physical Super Nintendo, and then it colorizes it after that in a sort of way. So you color certain parts of the screen, but you can't make it scroll or anything. You can't say make Mario red. You can say make the screen red, or you can say make the top half of the screen red. So it's this really, really weird style of colorization that basically doesn't resemble anything that anything before it or after has ever done, because it's such a bizarre technical limitation. But the games that used it well, they look really visually striking. I think it's a real shame that nothing ever really took full advantage of this. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm just I want to try and show what crazy shit you could do
with the Super Game Boy.
Yeah.
What are some of the games that you think did it well? Metroid 2, would you say, or Donkey Kong 94?
Well, Metroid 2 didn't use it, which is frustrating. The Nintendo Power issue had a bunch of suggestions for palettes, and I think that's what
right.
The Super Game Boy. But they all look so bad. It's suggesting 3 shades of awful yellow and a gray, and that will totally look better in this cave. No, it won't. It all looks better. But Donkey Kong 94 is beautiful. I was amazed actually seeing that in color. It does a lot of really striking things. In every single level, Mario is always red. The backgrounds aren't necessarily. So it does a lot of interesting things with colors, because we have 4 colors, so that's a huge deal.
Right.
Him pop out, and everything else has unique color scheme.
And given how much we've talked about how text has been your focus, it's great to hear you saying that now you're going to be focusing on this really bizarre visual idea, this anomaly. I'm so interested in what's driving you to do this at this point in your career. You'd have to analyze yourself and get back to me on that, I guess. But do you have any guess as to why your instincts are telling you to move in this direction at this time?
Honestly, visuals have always been the biggest thing in my games for me. That's why I started with figuring out what they'll look like first, because that's what the player's going to be seeing for the entire game. That's really important. That affects their experience to a huge degree. Like Digital Love Story, it looks like an Amiga computer. It would be a completely different game. Like, it would just be a totally different experience if it had all the same content, had all the same writing, but looked like, say, an RPG. That would be a totally different game.
Sure.
So I feel like the visuals are always the thing that comes first. What's the player's experience going to be? And then content comes after. So I feel like it's the same thing. It's just me doing it with an action game rather than
okay. Yeah, that makes sense. You did say before, I wasn't ignoring you, I promise, that you put the UI first. But to think that you are this fascinated with the Super Game Boy, which is not hot right now. I wish it were. I wish people were going...
Not hot now, not hot ever.
I was pretty hot for it, personally. I was totally hot for the Super Game Boy. But you're right, it never blew up the spot big, ever, that I can think of. But it's something you're drawn to at this point. Have you always been interested in it, or do you think where you're at in your career right now is making you want to bring the Super Game Boy visual language back to the forefront?
I wasn't really interested in it before. Like, I just remembered it as a kid as like some worthless novelty that didn't really add anything interesting. Like everyone remembers it. But I was
sure.
I don't remember what inspired this, but I did some research into it, and I was trying to figure out how actually its colorization worked, and I thought that was so neat that it just inspired me. That's really the thing. It's just that happens a lot with things I do. They usually start with some bit of research, whether it's 80s BBSs or Joseon Dynasty literature. And then that leads to me being curious and going deeper, and then if it's really interesting, I'd like to make something out of it.
Right. But it's so much work. I know we've already touched on that, but I'm always so fascinated with someone who can get interested in something and then decide, okay, 3 months, 6 months, and also my name, my persona, this is what I'm going to be known for. Hopefully I'm not psyching you out or discouraging you. I think it's great that you do it, but it is most people get interested in something and then read about it, and then a week later they've moved on to the next thing. But you've got a history now of dedicating yourself to things for at least months at a time and doing something with it. Good for you. Jeez.
Oh no, I've only done that like once. Everything else was just a month-long project. Like,
a month is a long... I don't know, maybe in your world everyone works on month-long projects, but the people I know are like, I'm interested in Scottish history. I'll read a book. Well, I'm done reading the book. Let's go back to the bar. They don't stick with things as you do. But you're not doing it, at least I don't get the sense you're doing it, because you expect fame and fortune out of it. It seems like it's really about the passion with you, which is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, a lot of what I do is just because I want to learn about something. For writing Analogue, it wasn't just about I didn't know what I was going to say with it going in. I just felt like doing all this research, I felt like women in the society didn't have any voices. So it was so hard for me to figure out what their experiences were like. So my goal of Analogue was to try and figure out what would it be like to live in a society like this. So it was like, obviously I want something that other people will play and find interesting, but a lot of it was just, I wanted to know. I wanted to try and understand it, so I wrote all this to try and get into those mindsets.
Interesting. You really wanted to know that badly. That's the thing about it. Most people that I know, their curiosity stops at a certain point because they don't get any energy back into it. They're putting in all this work, but they don't get anything back out, and then they run out of steam and quit. But you brought it all the way. That's awesome. Now I'm just complimenting you. Sorry. It's something that happens to me sometimes when I'm interviewing someone. I just tell them they're neat.
I guess the camera can't see us, but I'm shifting awkwardly right now.
Sorry about that. Compliments are good, I'm just being honest, saying things that I think, just like you with your games. You're just saying things you think too. It's neat. We have that in common, I guess. Speaking of people, I wonder if anyone's asked us any questions yet. Nope. So we're gonna. Oh, there are the questions. Do you want to have some questions from the people watching the show?
Let's do some questions.
Okay, neat. The Cruel Angel asks, Christine, have you ever watched Madoka Magica? I don't know what that is.
It's a magical girl anime from last year, I believe, which was an incredibly dark deconstruction of the genre. It's like Sailor Moon if everything was sort of grim and I don't want to say realistic, but it's like super gritty. It's like the Watchmen of magical girl anime.
I think I heard about this. Isn't there a brutal death that's gross and sad?
Yes. It's
okay.
There's a lot of brutal stuff that's all sad. And to answer the question, I like the parts that were brutal and sad. I felt like sort of the ending got away from it. Like it feels like there's a totally different ending planned, and then it didn't do that, and instead had a really happy ending. It was totally inappropriate. It should have been like horrible, apocalyptic, and everything goes wrong, and the universe gets destroyed. That's what I was expecting. It didn't happen, so that was disappointing.
Huh. That's interesting. I always, I try to fight that feeling in myself when I watch something and I find myself becoming like co-writer in my mind. Like, oh, I know what they're going for. And here's the story they're trying to tell, and I think I know how it should end, and then it doesn't. Then I'm kind of disappointed. But I guess, I don't know, that feeling usually causes me to be less happy in the end, so I try to reject it.
I can't turn that off. It's just impossible. I mean, that's why I write, because I see things and I think, oh, that's good. I like parts of that. I'm not sure it's the right direction, but so yeah.
Right. Then you can complete it yourself. Has anyone ever done that to you? Like written you email about analog or digital and said, "Great story, but you know what? I know how it should have ended, and here's what I think," and take that. Has that happened to you yet?
Most of the time, it's usually only in vague senses, like saying, "Oh, I didn't really like that there's a love story in this. Why was that there? I think it's inappropriate. I'm not going to consider why it's in there." There was at least a couple emails I got that were like very, very long, point by point, several pages of extreme detail telling me what the ending of "Don't Take It Personally, Babe" should have been about.
Huh. Don't Take It Personally, Babe. You haven't talked about that one yet. For the viewers, tell us what that is.
It's a visual novel starring a high school teacher who can spy on his students' Facebook posts.
Creepy.
It's very creepy and it's more flawed than I think on most of my stuff. Like the ending does sort of fall apart. Although I assure you, the person who sent the point-by-point 10-page long essay about a better ending, it was not better ending.
Interesting. So how did that make you feel to have someone, first of all, take your work seriously enough that they felt the urge to do that, and second, kind of the gall to suggest that they know your brain better than you do, and here's what you should have said, or here's what you tried to say but didn't, and let me help you. How did that... Because it's a strange double-edged sword, I'd imagine.
I just felt it was more weird than anything else. How do you handle that? I don't even know. That's most of my response to a lot of the weirder responses I've gotten. I don't understand how you deal with these sorts of weird emails.
Yeah,
I'm just confused.
Sure. Well, it is a huge compliment and insult at the same time, which is always the weirdest thing. When the dog wags its tail and growls at you simultaneously, you don't know whether to pet it or run away. That's how I feel anyway when I get those kinds of emails. Oh wait, sorry, more questions. Sorry to be a jerk, everybody who asked questions. People really want to ask you about anime. What anime are you watching and liking nowadays? Ask Iferdijani.
I just finished watching Yormagon, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. It's a sort of it's about an arms dealer who is fairly unhinged and travels around with a bunch of bodyguards. And, it's basically just it's crime fiction basically.
Huh? I haven't heard of that one.
It just, I think, first season just finished in Japan, like a month ago maybe.
Okay.
It's so yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun, and one of the things I thought while watching it was, gosh, this is an awfully female-heavy cast. I realized, no, it's like a third of the people. It's just that women actually matter in this.
There's
always an uncomfortable feeling, but it's well, it's great for something like that. That's actually, they're awesome women characters who actually, make a difference. It's always not necessarily common in that sort of fiction.
Sure.
It makes me happy when I see it.
Was the show created by women? Do you know?
I have no idea.
That's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. Is the difference between female characters created by males and women created by women in fiction. I've been resisting talking to you about gender, though, because I don't want to be one of those jerks who's like, I've got a woman on my show. Let's immediately address her gender and what she thinks of gender things. But you brought it up, so now we can talk about it if you want to. So up to you. I'm up for talking to you about anything. But
did you play my last game? It's certainly about gender.
Yeah, it sure is. It sure is. But still, I don't. If I were you, I'm trying to put myself in your shoes. It would just be kind of yucky if people were always just talking to me about man things because I was a man. I'd be like, oh, I'm more than just a man. I'm a person. Talk to me about person things, not just my junk and my stubble and my bald head. It's more to me than just man junk.
Nobody ever talks to me about gender stuff in interviews, though.
What? No one ever talks to you about gender? What are they thinking?
It happened in the really good ones, but I find it frustrating. Like, come on, stop asking me generic questions about the creative process here. I can give you something to.
Dude, wow. Because this whole time I've been thinking, I sure hope we get to gender, but I want it to be organic.
Stop sitting on Holmes and just ask.
Well, there's so much. Where could we? Where do I even start now that I have this golden opportunity? Wow, boy, am I kicking myself. I could have been doing this from the start. Well, to start off with, what do you think of the current climate for women in gaming? In terms of being a developer and in terms of the kinds of games that are being made about women in both the mainstream and the indie side of things. Do you have any general feelings about how things are going on both of those ends?
I think we're not in a particularly great situation right now. I mean, I know if I walk into a room of game developers, I will very possibly be one of the only women in the room. That's a really common thing. So that's frustrating. I feel like there's a huge problem with mainstream games that are very just don't really acknowledge that women play games or so much as even exist. So I feel like, there's issues, but at the same time, like, there's a lot of people who are trying to make things better. There's a lot of, like, recently, there's been so much discussion on, at least in the part of the internet I hang around in, about this whole tropes versus women series and all the backlash about that. And I think it's so great that we're actually talking about online harassment now in games. That's, I mean, that's always been a problem, but now we're actually talking about this. So I think there's a lot to be hopeful for. At the same time, there's also a lot of initiatives for getting women involved in game making. Like, well, you had Zoe Quinn on your show before, so you know that she does awesome work in community organizing there.
Right. Okay. For people who might have missed her episode, she puts together game jams that are men can come, but kind of the purpose of it is to pull women into game development and show them that it's something that there's a space for them there, and it's a special thing. I think it's pretty awesome. So it sounds to me like you're excited that we're sort of tearing the edge of this thing, but we have a long way to go until we've really started to unravel it. Personally, I've been really sad about how some people are reacting to tropes versus women. I think that probably goes without saying, but it's been pretty freaking depressing. Maybe you always knew it was depressing, but for me, I feel like a rock has been kind of lifted, and I'm seeing all these disgusting bugs that have been lying around in the gamer culture, because this topic wasn't broached before, so they didn't have a reason to come out, but now that they have, ugh! Pretty gross, right?
Well, it's absolutely gross. It's profoundly disgusting, but this isn't actually new stuff. I mean, like, this level of backlash is a bit novel, but it's not really a new experience for a woman to be harassed for, daring to say shit's kind of fucked up.
Yeah. I guess I've been more shocked with... I mean, I expected a backlash, but the kind of the boldness and the revoltingness... Like, I've been called all sorts of racial slurs, and people threatened to bash my head in and stuff like that because I've said something they didn't like, but kind of the whole... the scale of it in this particular instance, and the intensity of the venom and how collective it is so gross.
Gross, but I don't think it's necessarily unusual. Like, you hear, like, most prominent women bloggers have stories about how many rape threats they get in their email, and it's usually disgustingly common.
Yeah.
So I don't think this is it's just something that we don't necessarily talk about all that much because it's just a given, and I'm glad we're not just taking that for granted anymore. We're actually being horrified by this.
And I'm relieved that people are horrified by it. A lot of people are, but I'm finding that there's a problem in terms of you get to this point where you're horrified, and then you're just kind of up against the disgustingness, and then what do? You can't talk them out of being awful, and what's a better word for them? They are so threatened by the fact that they're being criticized at all, because even though Anita is not directly criticizing them as human beings, they feel defensive because the types of characters that they clutch onto are being questioned in terms of their validity, and therefore they're just taking that as license to do these terrible threats and make games about punching her in the face and whatnot. It's so I don't know what to do with these people who are so threatened that they feel like they need to lash out at someone they've never even met who's just bringing up a topic. What do you think we should do with these jerks?
I don't know if there's anything you can do to directly deal with them, but I think the big thing is just to keep talking about this and to try to push things in a better direction. I mean, if we can have better representation of women, if we can move away from the ones that are completely screwed up, we can start to make people realize that it's been problematic before. And, I mean, you can only have a knee-jerk reaction so many times, these people. Eventually, norms will just change, and I think that's what we need to do. We just need to keep talking, keep trying to... And, I mean, for someone who's, say, in the press, I don't necessarily know what else you can do other than just keep making a big deal about it, but for people who are actually involved in making games, it's really simple. Let's make games that address these issues, that actually handle things better. We just need to keep doing it.
Yeah. I wish it were so simple for me. I want to just make games like you that are good. Maybe someday I'll have the guts. I just don't have the guts. That's my problem. I can write an article, it takes a week, but working on something for a month like that takes so much courage. So, sorry, complimenting you again. My mistake. Let's keep this conversation going. Let's be the people who are talking about things that are important to talk about. What do you think needs to change in terms of the way women are depicted in the video games?
It's just like, right now, I think we're just like still at the point where it's really small things. Like, we just don't have barely any games where women even seem to make it any sort of difference. there aren't many games starring women at all. Like, it's still a novelty to have a game with a female protagonist. And when it does happen, you get stuff like the recent Tomb Raider, which is just, well, everything we've seen so far is kind of horrifying. This idea that you can't have a woman protagonist unless there's somehow some sort of sexual parallel. So just moving away from that, which feels like, shouldn't be that hard. It just shouldn't. None of these things are really radical.
Yeah, people have gotten so mad at me for criticizing the new Tomb Raider because I was personally really grossed out when the executive producer on it said, "Well, this isn't a game where you're relating with the character."
Oh my god, I know. Like, that's incredibly screwed up. Like, I just can't even imagine how. Where does this come from? Can you not relate to women at all? You feel that women are just completely unrelatable, instead have to be objects to protect and be protected? Like, that was just, you'll want to protect her. What the hell?
Well, thank you. That's very validating to hear from you, because I consider yourself smart. But a smart person who really is excited about the new Tomb Raider, she was telling me that this is like her time to play a game where someone who's been victimized strikes back, and that's really exciting for her. And everything I told her, like, well, I can see what you're saying, but, it's being made by these dudes who aren't putting themselves in the role of the character they're creating. They're creating an object to be sympathized with, and I think that's kind of gross. And she was like, no, it's going to be awesome. So then it was tough for me as a dude. I don't feel like I can go around telling women who their role models should and shouldn't be, because I'm not a woman. I have no idea what it's like to be a woman and what role models you should and shouldn't have. But I still have an opinion about it, which leaves me in kind of a weird spot. But at least you just made me feel like I'm not a total jackass, which is neat.
Yeah, and I don't think you need to. Like, obviously you can like things that are sort of screwed up. Like, not every game is, no piece of fiction is perfect. Usually things are a little problematic in some way. It's just, in this case, it's like, I really love the idea behind it. The idea that, that you're playing as someone who's vulnerable, who's getting hurt a lot, to overcome that. Which, I feel like that's a good place to start from with an action protagonist. Actually showing some vulnerability rather than, games full of people who can take 30 bullets and not even blink. It's just, when you say you can't, we don't think players can relate to a woman, I feel like that's beyond the pale.
Yeah, you're kind of screwed from that point. Maybe the game will be great, but it's always going to be colored by that comment from me now, which is a shame. And also the fact that it's an icon, one of the few female icons in gaming. They're creating this story for her about being victimized. It's kind of weird, because I always thought that Lara Croft was about just doing whatever you want, and gender almost being secondary, except for the fact that she's so grossly over-sexualized. Once you get past that, a lot of the women I know who look up to that character are like, she's just a badass sociopath, and she doesn't need a backstory. That's what I've always liked about her. To give her a backstory saying, like, well, because you've had this tough time, now you can be as badass as a guy is kind of deflating her from what she was, which was just another action hero who happened to be a woman. That makes me sad, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
You agree with me?
Yes, it's that shocking.
I'm so psyched I'm not dumb! People are quick to make me feel like I'm a total moron, you see. Man, people get mad at me. Whoa. Do you want to be in the press sometime? Maybe you should, because you're a great writer on top of being a creative mind. Do you want to just write video game blogs sometime and see how it feels?
Not enough time for that.
Yeah.
Who has time to talk about video games? I'm too busy making them.
When you're busy making them. Yeah, that makes sense. Are there any... it's weird. I hate to just make it about what it's like for dudes, but that's all I can talk about as a dude. Because dudes, they look at these criticisms that happen. Like, let's say a guy loves Princess Peach. He's just always thought she was the best. And then a woman comes out and says, you know what? Princess Peach is supporting a lot of negative stereotypes about women. She's passive. She's kind of passive-aggressive. She only uses her emotions in order to get anything that she wants. She had one game where, like, her big attack is she can cry and, like, get upset about things. I don't know if you ever played that. It really...
I did not play it, but I've certainly seen this, and it's,
yeah,
really?
Can you believe...
Really?
Okay, yeah. Just the other day, I was talking to a guy who is really... He couldn't help but be insulted, personally, because he really loves Princess Peach just the way she is and identifies with her and her emotions and whatnot, sort of in a brony-esque way. I don't know if you've heard of these bronies.
I'm aware.
A lot of them love My Little Pony because it's a way for them to identify with characters who actually show emotions and have some femininity to them, and they wish they could do that, but they can't, so they do it through bronyism, through loving the ponies. Which is fine. Ponies seem like a fine show. But, yeah, there's this strange phenomenon I'm noticing where men who love female characters the way they are because they feel as though they're vessels for this kind of sublimated or compressed or suppressed femininity, they're getting criticized, and they feel this need to stick up for Princess Peach and for Samus for crying about Ridley and stuff like that. They feel a strong defensiveness, and I'm trying to think of ways to get through that to these dudes, because I feel like that's my place. Do you have any tips for me? What should I say to dudes who don't get it?
I feel like they're already, close to getting it because, that's fundamentally people who are not being represented by these super gendered stereotypes that we always push.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, now imagine what that must be like from the other side, where it's women are such a minority in representations in games at all that it's always like this. There's never any sort of, or very rarely non-stereotypical portrayals. Like, I feel like, really, when you push these sorts of stereotypes and you force these on people, it hurts men, too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reluctant to say just as much, because obviously it's, it's, at the end of the day, being a guy is still kind of privileged, and being a woman is still seen as kind of not so great, but
sure.
Still, when you say that men shouldn't be feminine, shouldn't relate to female characters, like in the case of Lara Croft, that's still pretty harmful.
Yeah. Huh. I like your technique. So if I show them, hey guys, you know how you wish you had characters you could, that had a feminine side to them, and that's why you relate with Peach so much and want to defend Peach? What if there was just a male character who was like Peach that you could just relate with? Wouldn't that be nice if there was just a passive, emotional dude in a video game for a change? Has that ever happened? I'm trying to think of a game about a passive, emotional guy. Maybe Final Fantasy VIII? I don't know. One time, maybe it happened. That's what we have right now. I've always been a guy who wants, because I'm kind of gender weird. I don't know if you noticed. I don't look gender weird. I just look like a man, unfortunately. But on the inside, I'm kind of this, like, I've got a little bit of lipstick on. I'm kind of like David Bowie, circa Spiders from Mars era. I play a lot of Animal Crossing. I don't like Gears of War at all. I'm just talking about me. I'm sorry. Let's get some more questions. Oh, Axiom Verge, another game developer, is here. He wants to know, do you think there's anything the industry can do to attract more women writers, like you and Amy Hennig? Amy Hennig wrote Uncharted, or is she Mass Effect? I messed that up. One of those two.
Man, I have no idea. Industry stuff is beyond me.
Yeah, I sometimes know who Amy Hennig is. But do you think there's... I have an answer for him, but I want your answer. What do you think could pull more women into writing about video games and writing video games themselves?
To be perfectly honest, I have no idea. Like I said, industry stuff is just like completely beyond what I know about. It's I feel
I'm
like we
excited
need
to
to have games, that actually value writers of any gender. Like, that's a big thing that we don't necessarily do. We don't necessarily care about games for their narratives. So I feel like that's one thing that we definitely need to push more towards. And but as far as women specifically, I don't know.
I do.
Okay.
It's you.
Let's.
You.
Okay,
You have,
fine.
you have to do it all yourself for now. You and a couple of other people, but if women know that women are writing games and that the games are being well received, then they will be like, oh, I could write video games instead of writing another novel. And that's how I think it happened with novels, too. Long ago. You know more about history than me, I think, so you would be able to speak to this. But women writing about what it's like to be a woman wasn't so big 500 years ago, or even, a few hundred years ago, but it slowly came to be a thing that people realized was worth doing because people were going to positively react to it. So as long as you keep making games, and I do hope you get a huge budget game someday that's really popular, I think you could write a better game than David Cage, personally. And I hope you get a David Cage-size game someday to make. You know David Cage? He made Heavy Rain.
Yeah.
It's got some stereotypes in it, Heavy Rain. I don't know if you saw that.
I've seen parts of it.
Yeah, he's met people before, but he didn't take note of what they were like. So then when he had to write a game about people, he was like, wasn't there a guy once who cried? I'll write about him. Wasn't there a sexy lady once and a pimp? I'll write about them. That's all he had. Oh, poor guy. He seems like a nice enough guy. Killshroom has a long question. It's exciting. Killshroom asks, in Christine's opinion, why are there not many games dealing with love in a realistic and adult way, as your games have? Your games have dealt with love in a realistic and adult way, when it is so often addressed in other forms of art and entertainment. I'm taking that to just ask, why are video games often so primitive, and when they try to get sophisticated in any way, things tend to fall apart, like David Cage?
I feel like there's just some big reluctance to do anything new and different in video games in general. Like, we are very, very conservative when it comes to most big budget or prominent games. So there's, at the same time, it's a little more difficult to. Violence is the easiest thing to make a video game about. It's
and butts. People just, yeah, it's so primitive. People can immediately, speaking of lowest common denominator, everybody in the world, I think, likes some kind of butt and can relate with violence on some level. I'm sorry, I cut you off, though. Continue.
I feel like we don't have enough games about butts. We have games where butts intrude unwanted. We have games where they're really about shooting, but for some reason there's this butt in the way. But we don't actually have many games that... I'm sorry, this metaphor is... I'm not entirely comfortable with it.
I think it's fantastic, and I'm glad you shared it with the world. You're right. You'll be playing a video game, then suddenly a butt will be in there.
That's pretty much how I felt about Miranda from Mass Effect.
Yeah, she was just the butt that showed up. And they tried to build a character later.
We'll give you a call after this.
Oh, trust me, I know the wrath of Mass Effect fans quite well. But I'm sorry, you were saying that it's the easy way out to just do things on a primitive level, and you were elaborating from there.
Right, and it's easy to imitate games that have been made before. Like, if you're trying to make a game about love and sex or whatever, there's not really much to go back to. There's there's a tradition of stuff like dating simulators, which I don't think are really necessarily what you want to be imitating. There's I think the best game that actually tries to deal with adult games like that is Catherine, which is really, it's a bizarre puzzle game with cutscenes that are about relationships, and it feels for all that, I really like Catherine a lot. Actually, it's definitely tacking these two things on, so it doesn't know how to actually present. And I feel like this is a problem just in general with a lot of games. You have say, the first Dragon Age, which is a game about, making alliances and trying to build an army, all you do is fight people. All you do is hit things with your sword, despite the fact it's not even what the game's about. Because we're so used to making games that are about hitting things with swords. Nobody stops and goes, wait, we should make this game that's about making alliances, actually about making alliances.
Yeah. So from what I'm gathering from what you're saying is it's a pattern that people are following along because they want success, and it's also easy. It's much easier to make a game that's just a simple physical cause and effect than actually get into the psychological depth of things. I'm hoping that like how comic books have slowly, and animation too, slowly attracted more and more types of people, and also people who want to do more and more with those mediums. I'm hoping gaming does as well. I'm glad you brought up Catherine, though. I have really mixed feelings about Catherine.
Oh my god, me too. I mean,
you too?
I can't, I don't want to talk about Catherine too much without qualifying. It has some really, really, I find myself constantly bewildered by it, when I'm playing it. It's like, wow, it really feels like the person who made this really hates straight people. Like, that's...
I had never thought of that.
Do you people actually feel this way about gender roles? It's like, just feels constantly bewildering that anyone could actually buy into this crazy, super exaggerated gender essentialism. And I know it's not actually, like, they didn't think they were being exaggerated. They thought that these were deep truths, but it's just... So, like, everything it says about men and women is so incredibly problematic and wrong. But I really salute it for, trying. Like,
yeah,
it's actually making the effort. It's presenting sexuality in a way that's actually sexy, which is more than they can say about, say, BioWare.
Where it's just kind of an exchange that happens. Like, we had the sex, now we are closer.
I was so frustrated by them. In Mass Effect 3, there's this really wonderful scene between Shepard and Yara, which I thought was so sweet and so lovely, and I squealed at the end. And then it gets ruined. Yeah, it was lovely, and then it gets ruined by the BioWare sex scene. I can only assume was made by people who have never had sex or seen sex or really understand exactly what sex is about. Because it was not even slightly attractive.
I think they thought that's the sex that people could understand and relate with. Either that or they just really can't craft that kind of depth at all and
so
just failed.
Bad.
Have you seen The Room, starring Tommy Wiseau? It was
very recently, yes.
Yeah, you know exactly what I mean.
Oh my god.
Yeah, you are my
please,
rose.
thank you for... Yes, this interview wasn't complete without the mental image of Tommy Wiseau's ass. Thank you for bringing that.
I actually interviewed.
Thank you.
Sorry, it's a problem I have. Yeah, Catherine, as a straight male, I can say it is. At best, I took it as a parody of just a nihilistic, like angry, mean-spirited look at any potential for falling in love at all. And it's about spatial relationships, which I thought was neat. It's about spatial relationships in both the puzzle aspect and the relationship aspect. So that was, I'm glad it exists, but its message is awful. And I hope nobody thinks that that's what real relationships should be like. It's just gross.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay, good, yay. Wow, you're getting so many awesome questions. Man. Can I do it? Can I ask this question? From Eliotol? Is this someone you know? Because they seem to know your brain so well. They ask, Christine, can you talk about Hayun IE actually become Hayun IE? Yeah, I know, I'm terrible at saying words. Thank you for helping me. IE, how does someone become transhuman in your world? It seemed to me that the game left this process to the player's imagination, although maybe I'm just missing something, and this is another excuse for you to talk about your game in more detail so people who haven't played it can get sold on it and excited. So explain this whole process and this concept, if you don't mind. Do it nice and loud so I can hear you. So good.
Oh dear. Well, this is it's not really something that's really addressed too much in the game because I feel it's not actually really all that important. I mean, there is a sort of basically a human becomes an artificial intelligence in this game as a way of surviving after death, and the technical details aren't really gone into because I don't really like it's not really making a statement about transhumanism necessarily. Okay. It's just taken as a granted that people in this are, or that artificial intelligences are able to simulate human conversation up to the point where you might as well be a real person. That's just taken as a granted. If someone talks like a person, you treat them like one. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, really what this is all about, it's just a metaphor for fictional characters. Because Hyone is not actually a real person at any point. She's either a robot or a fictional character.
Right.
So you might feel affection, you might be emotionally moved by that. That's still valid, but... And, I mean, really, that's what it's all about. It's valid, this affection that you feel, or that these emotions that these fictional characters stir in you. And even in the game, they're not necessarily anything more than that. It's just people are just what they make you feel.
Yeah, and the game is about feeling something for the game, and likewise, yeah. Whew. I was just gonna re-explain what you just said, but you said it better than I could say it. Smart. I'm glad you made a smart game. But the science of how the transformation into a artificial yet still alive in that it can behave in such a way that it feels like a real person to other people, you're not going to necessarily get into the science of that, I would imagine. That would be hard.
Not so much. I mean, well, it would just be all speculation as to how these things could work. I mean, the way it works for this one particular character is that she's someone else's personality who just has all the memories of this actual human being.
Right.
Which is, so in a way, they're actually different people. It's not actually the personality of the person who died. It's someone else who has all of their memories.
Right. And we are a collection of memories and how those memories have shaped our perspective on things. So that's almost a person then.
It's close. I mean, it's certainly unknown. Is there something more? I don't know. Is there an essential personality that transcends just raw collections of experiences? Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I leave that as a question to the player. That's not necessarily answerable.
Yeah, because if you answered it, then you might be wrong. That would suck. Better to just let it be known that how can you know? Yeah, that's fun. I'm glad we talked about sci-fi fun. Someone has a much more concrete, this is brass tacks, just getting down to business talk. LaFay asks, is there any chance your series will be ported to iPad or iOS? Or do you feel its true home is on computers to keep the authenticity of the BBS interface? I'd like to see it on everything, your game. And it could be ported pretty much in terms of the programming aspect. I imagine it wouldn't be too tough for someone to port it over to different platforms. Is that something you're interested in?
I feel like the big problem with something like digital is that it's so completely bound to the 80s computer interface that doing something on a touchscreen would just take you out of it. I mean, like, that's just a huge part of it.
Sure.
For something like Analog, again, it's actually Analog is a technical problem. It's not, I feel like a touchscreen would be perfectly fine for that sort of far future interface. Sure. It's just, there's a lot of typing in it. And I don't really want people, forcing people to type a lot of stuff on that awful iPad keyboard in really tense moments.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like, I feel like if there's ever going to be an iOS version of that one, you'd have to totally change around the console parts in order to make them, not involve typing quite so much.
That would be a huge change, yeah.
The one I think would work is Don't Take It Personally, because it is, like, that's your interface in the game. You get what is essentially a futuristic iPad.
Mm-hmm.
And that's your only way of interacting with the game. So I feel like that would definitely be a good fit.
I hope, selfishly, I want you to see if you could put that on the Nintendo 3DS shop. Because that would be so awesome if Nintendo had to decide whether they were going to allow that game on their shop. They've got a game, I think it's called like Ultimate High School Experience right now, which is a weird text adventure sort of game where you're like the hot new guy in class, and you have to choose between the goth chick or the cheerleader, and it's really tough to choose.
That was definitely my high school experience.
Yeah, they've got that on there, but would they allow Don't Take It Personally, Babe on there? I sure hope they would. That could get you rich. Wouldn't that be weird if that's how you became totally rich? The 3DS version of that?
Yes, that would definitely be weird.
It's possible. That's the thing about rap music. And you're kind of a rapper in my mind. It's one of the reasons I asked you about rap. Because when rappers first started out, they didn't think they were going to get rich. There was no rich rappers. They were like, I like rapping, and I got a record player, and I can scratch on it. And now I'm a rapper, scratching and rapping. And before you knew it, they were huge. They were LL Cool J on Saturday Night Live, wearing a leather jacket and driving a fancy car. You could be driving that fancy car, wearing that leather jacket. Maybe. Maybe the 3DS will get you there. It's pretty exciting. Are you excited about it?
3DS in general, I don't know. I feel like I want to be excited about it. It's just nothing that actually looks interesting.
Yeah,
like, I love 3D. Like, that's my favorite stupid gimmick.
You like 3D?
I love gratuitous 3D so much.
Whoa.
Just things popping out at the player.
But you haven't liked many 3DS games yet?
There hasn't really been anything that really jumps out at me as by the system. Like, I want to desperately love it, but please, Nintendo, give me something to love.
Yeah, that's nice of you to ask so politely. Most people are much more demanding. That's one... Jeez, we're already done with the show already, and I haven't even asked you what kind of games you really like. I know you like fighting games, and I really do think it makes sense that you like fighting games, because the fighting game interface and the way you have an interface in your games makes sense to me. It's so much call and response with your games. And I think the same is true of fighting games. You really let people get to know you in your games, like have a conversation with you, which is wonderful. Anyway, well, what are the kinds of games you really love? Just so people know you. Tell us what games you like.
To me, it's less about genre, more about like games. I like games that tell stories. Mm-hmm. That's like the most important thing. I'll play a lot of games that have shooting in them because they're absolutely good at having an interesting narrative. Like, I'm not necessarily into games that are just violent for the sake of being violent. I don't like them. I'm probably not going to be playing a Call of Duty game anytime soon, but I did say I love Bulletstorm for being really clever at having a message to say.
Really? What did you love about Bulletstorm?
God, there's so much to love about Bulletstorm. I honestly...
It's so nice to hear.
Well, no one liked it, which I feel is frustrating. I feel like it just went over the heads of most people. It's
it's
a beautiful satire of video game ultra-violence that has its sense of humor is smarter than it lets on. I mean, to be fair, it is also a game that understands the word dick is hilarious, which I feel is see, that's a valid point. It's a funny word.
It is.
But on top of that, it's it's reveling in this very over-the-top satire of that sort of ultra-violence, and I feel like underneath that really juvenile presentation, it's very clever.
Yeah, games like that, I love them because I have enough ego to withstand it when a game is making fun of me, but also paying tribute to me a little bit at the same time. And the side of myself that just likes dick jokes and shooting stuff. I like to see that made fun of because I know that's a dumb side of myself, but it's still a valid side. I think it, like you're saying, goes over a lot of people's heads or just like offends them. Like a lot of people I know hate No More Heroes because it's a send-up of the bachelor who's obsessed with video games and masturbating. And they're like, that's what I am. Don't make fun of me. And I'm like, yeah, that's okay to be that guy for a little while. Just have a laugh about it. It's also a tribute because he ends up being a decent person by the end of the game. But anyway, oh crap, only 10. But this has gone so fast. Does this feel like it's been an hour and a half to you?
No. This is really. Come on. Let's stop. Let's stop asking awkward questions. Just get to the point here. Come on.
I'm sorry,
something
Christine.
I can answer valuable.
Yeah, there's tons of questions, but it feels like it's gone so fast. I feel like I've wasted time having fun.
Stop wasting more time. Ask a question.
I will, I promise. Zeppelo Clown asks, what are your favorite inspirations in VNs? What do you think VNs
Favorite
means?
visual novels?
Oh, yes, that's what it means.
I'm going to list off a bunch of things that no one will have heard of, whether you're into visual novels or, well, possibly if you're into visual novels. Anyway, what really got me into visual novels was something called Narciso, which is a really, really dreary, there's no choices or anything. It's just completely, absolutely no branching, no options, but it's all about a pair of terminally ill teenagers in Japan who plot suicide, basically. And it's not uplifting, but it's what it does is it makes fantastic use of very limited visuals and music and prose to tell a good story, and that really got me into the media. Past out there is collage, which is again, most people haven't heard of it. Actually, I'll post about it on my blog again because I love talking about collage, and I will do it at the drop of any hat. But it's again very sort of minimal visuals. It uses a lot of photography, but it's all about telling the story of it's sort of a love story, sort of about a lost child, sort of it's all sorts of things, but it's told from 3 different perspectives, and they interweave and connect with each other. It's just such a great presentation, and it's such an interesting story because everything changes every time you see someone from a different side. So that is absolutely what I love in storytelling, getting different perspectives from things. So collage is huge to me.
It sounds awesome. I'm sold. Thanks.
Yeah. So those would definitely be the big 2. I mean, there's a lot. I've read a lot of visual novels, and some are good, a lot are not, but those are definitely the biggest influences.
Those 2. Awesome. You can do a list if you want. I don't mean to cut you off. People like lists, and a lot of people listening to the show may have never really played a visual novel or haven't played one in a long time, so feel free to list if you want. I'm going to look for another question. No list?
Really, if you want to get into visual novels, I would recommend one of those 2. Past that, I could list a bunch, but I don't think anything quite
right. So those are the top 2.
Quite holds up to those.
That makes sense. What are your thoughts on the new Sailor Moon series? Asks Confused Dalek.
Well, right now we know absolutely nothing about this, other than there's going to be a new Sailor Moon series, and we also know who will be performing the opening theme. There isn't really much to go on, but I'm really excited about it. I love Sailor Moon. I want to see more Sailor Moon. So long as it, continues to be crazy, if it does something different from the other ones, which so far every bit of Sailor Moon fiction has done something totally new. Like, there's a live-action series which is just scales up the camp and does a lot of different things. There's the anime which diverges from the comics a lot. So I feel like so long as it gets that, I'm going to be really excited about it.
About Sailor Moon. I would never have guessed. You told me earlier you like magical girl stuff. Tell me why you like it. I'm so befuddled.
Sailor Moon, honestly, I'm not going to lie, I probably would not be into it if I didn't watch it when I was like 4. It was, this was formative childhood experience for me. But no, it's an action show about women which actually does, despite being made in Japan, has some great ideas about gender role models.
Hmm.
There's I mean, really, that's what Sailor Moon's about. There's no wrong way to be a girl.
Huh.
There's there's people who have boyish interests. There's the people who cry all the time. There's the lesbians. I just love Sailor Moon.
Because it says that there's no wrong way to be a woman. See, a dummy like me who's only seeing Sailor Moon in passing wouldn't know that.
No, and to be fair, most of it, what it's really about is, it's an action cartoon, but it's
Sure.
I feel like that's a really good message for have, and it's a lot of fun.
That's one of my things for video games in general, but with a lot of the talk going on about female video game characters in particular, I feel like they're assessed on surface-level details a lot, and that bugs me. Like Sailor Moon, if you just look at it, you're like, oh, it's schoolgirl fetish, they have long legs, they get semi-nude when they transform into magical schoolgirls, and then they punch a demon, and then they go home. But there's a lot more to it, potentially, than that, if you really look. And I feel like a lot of the judgments being made about video games in general involve that as well. I wonder how we can get past that. I always want to ask you how to fix all my problems. Can you fix it? Can you fix all the problems, Christine?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like we have a lot of video games that are about, superficial details. We talk a lot about what's the new gimmick of this action game that is mostly the same as every single other brown first-person shooter on the market, but we have this gimmick that makes it slightly apart. So we have to focus on superficial details.
Mm-hmm.
We have games that are fundamentally exactly the same as others, except for the superficial details.
Mm-hmm.
So really, I feel like what we need to do is make deeper experiences. Make experiences that do different things. Because, I don't want to toot my own horn too much here, but when you talk about a game like Analogue, it's not really about the superficial details. You never say, oh, it's like X, but it has this. You sort of get overwhelmed by trying to explain what's you talk about how it's text heavy. You talk about how it's got pretty girls in it. You talk about how it's got how it might have a female protagonist for women who are playing. You talk about the historical setting it's based on. There's a lot to go with there, and I feel like there's not necessarily that to talk about when it's just yet another sequel or another brown first-person shooter.
So if people are making a video game, they should probably make a game that couldn't be summed up in its entirety in 2 sentences. Like
right,
Halo 4.
Don't make a game that's like X, but Y. If you can describe a game like that, you probably need to have a little more ambition.
Yeah, that's not tooting your own horn. That's just calling it how you see it, and I appreciate you doing that. Because a lot of people dance around it. They want to seem like, I don't want to seem like a jerk by saying Halo 4 is probably a lot like Halo 3 and all the fundamental, what it means, what experience you get out of it. It's probably just going to be shooting those aliens again. And that's fine. There's a place for that. But you can't expect video games to be judged by more than surface-level details when all you change is the surface-level details with your next big blockbuster.
I feel like that's exactly it.
I feel like we see eye to eye on a lot of neat things. Crap, we only have 2 minutes left in the show.
Oh, no.
Did I screw this show up? Did I do a bad job?
I don't know, but let's keep talking about that instead of actually moving on to content.
Let's talk about me some more.
Yeah,
Christine, do you like me? Do you? I'm just
Circle,
kidding.
yes, no.
Let's see if we have any more cool questions. I answered them out of order because I screwed up.
Okay, let's answer that last one because I like it.
What is it?
The one about people want to break into the scene.
Yeah.
And my advice there is, sorry, I'm just totally stealing your show here, but
no, do it. It's all yours.
My advice is to just make games. Like that's the absolute thing. Set small goals for yourself. Say, I'm gonna spend a month on this game. I'm gonna spend a week making a game, and then do it. It doesn't matter if it's any good. What's important is learning to actually see it through to the finish. What matters is getting a lot of practice in. Because, really, a lot of what you're going to make is not necessarily going to be amazing, but you want to learn the basics. You want to learn what it's like to actually finish a project. Because that is oftentimes the hardest thing, is you get too ambitious and then you never actually go.
Mm-hmm.
And past that, really meet people. Be friends with journalists. You guys are great. You actually get us out there, and that's what.
Oh, thanks. That's nice.
Well, not you personally. You've done nothing for me.
No, not that great. Yeah, I'm flawed, but I try at least. Absolutely, I think the more developers talk to us, or more people just decide you're a game developer and write me an email and show me what game you're working on. I'd be interested to see it, and if I can talk about it, and if I want to talk about it, I will. But you won't know unless you ask. And thank you, Christine, for responding to my weird request for you to be on my show. I hope it's a huge hit, this episode, and that everyone listens very hard to what you had to say, because I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me here.
Oh, yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, really? Mostly.
I'll do better next.
Well, first Holmes was born, then he got fat, bald, and tired. What's up, Holmes?
Implicitly, he got a fucking fleet. Take this. Take this. Take this. Take this.